this has become a huge topic over the past 5 years, where the warm up to get ready to bench is now taking longer than the whole bench training day.
What I can actually diagnose based off of ultrasound, MRI, those types of, diagnostic tools will actually help me see the severity of what's actually going on inside.
The bad guys are coming. The Padawan learners, the Jedi Knights, they get their sword and they run to it. What does Yoda do? He sits back and watches for a sec before he goes. Be Yoda. Don't run into battle. Be patient and rebuild real strong.
It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. Okay, we're back again on Table Talk with Dr. Mike and Dr. Christle, right? Guevarra, yes. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. And we're going to jump off with where we kind of ended with the last podcast with periodization, and we're going to get into the nuance of injuries. And considering you're a real doctor, you're not.
Noted.
Agreed. And that would be a good place to kind of jump off here. So with strength athletes, and I guess we just say all athletes that are training for strength.
All athletes in general.
All athletes that they should be.
Yeah.
What are the most common injuries that you're seeing?
A lot of kind of overuse injuries, a lot of...
Not if they're doing what we talked about last.
Well, if they were, we wouldn't have a reason to podcast.
So.
Okay.
It's a wide variety. It really depends on the sport. That we're looking at. I guess I immediately, gravitated toward like the general population that I typically tend to see. Usually, people who will do something random in training, but then when you actually talk to them about what exactly it is exactly is happening, for a lot of recreational general population, it's sort of like, oh, I decided to go into the gym today and decide to, my max bench is 225, and I decided to see if I could hit that once again, and now my pec hurts, and I don't know what to do. I'm like, oh, fuck, dude. So I get a lot of that, but when you talk about like more sort of people who are a little bit more structured, a lot of it seems to be, I've had this thing that just sort of crept up on me, this pain in my shoulder, and I just felt like I could train right through it. I could just ignore it. And now it's becoming a bigger problem to where I can't do, my quality of life, reaching up for things, on a high shelf is just not happening, and I don't know what else to do.
All right, so when you're talking overuse, can we break that into two categories, which would be the example that you gave, somebody that's just throwing something out there randomly for a stupid reason, and then the second category being something that's more attributed maybe to overreaching?
Yeah, so the acute acute thing is sort of, the load onto the joint or the tissue, just all of a sudden, suddenly, there's an event that happens, the load exceeds what the tolerance of the tissue. There is some sort of, loss of integrity or break. If you want to keep it very simple, there's pain, and now I can't do, I can't do whatever the exercise is, now I have all these other symptoms that are associated with it: pain, swelling, redness.
Okay, so if it's not acute, right, and it's a result of overreaching, let's just say, staying in a strength phase too long, etc., and then the takeaway would be the injury didn't actually happen the day it happened. It happened because of all this other stuff that happened before, right? Yeah. Would you say that most people don't get that?
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair statement. Most people don't really. Usually what ends up happening is the other thing example that I sort of described in the beginning.
Yeah, because I'll talk to a lot of lifters, say they tear a pec. And in most cases, they tweaked it, a few weeks earlier, and it felt a little tight a few weeks before that. And the default is, and I've made this mistake many times, it's probably why I'm as fucked up as I am now.
Same.
Right? Is just keep training through it and it will go away. Right? So, I got two voices in my head, right? The one head saying, well, fuck it. If you always did back off, you'd never train. Right? So then how does one navigate that landscape?
In terms of, diagnosing or how to actually come back from.
Well, how to know when to push through it and when to not.
Yeah. In terms of programming and kind of, for people who I would start looking at what their training is like leading up to kind of, where they started to remember, this nagging thing is sort of happening. I feel like it is a lot easier if you have somebody, an athlete who has a very structured regimen, actually follows that regimen, has this program versus, sort of the general population. Which I'm not necessarily sure that a lot of those people may or may not be listening to this podcast. Usually when it is that latter, we kind of, I tend to just back off immediately. And that might be, for better or for worse on my part, kind of the approach for that, because it's like we've got a lot of other things to talk about, like how to actually program, how to put together a plan, how to, progressive overload, like all those other things. And I can't do that in like a 15-minute time frame or, even an hour time frame sometimes, depending on how the conversation goes. So for, the other category of people who are, a little bit more structured, it's a combination of, what I can actually diagnose, based off of ultrasound, MRI, those types of, diagnostic tools will actually help me see the severity of what's actually going on inside. In addition to what can you actually do? Are you actually able to even have a range of motion? Are you actually able to take your joint through a range of motion with no weight at all? Or are you able to do, this and it's okay, but once we start loading the joint is where we start having problems.
Is it okay if I add something to that? So when you're young and hungry, you can get away with a lot, but that a lot you're getting away with is still wrong and still isn't making you as good as you could have been had you done it smarter. And I think the smart way to do it is, first of all, to ask yourself the honest question of, based on my last session and how my pec felt, do I think there's something in there that's going to go, that has a high probability of going? Because I've answered that question before in the affirmative and still squatted heavy like a fucking idiot. And sometimes you get away with it. And then you learn backwards nonsense of like, YOLO, it doesn't matter. And that's not good, because every other time it fails and then you're out for 8 weeks or whatever. So I would say the first thing to ask yourself is like, are you just being a bitch, or are you good to go? And are you good to go? Or are you like, man, my pec is tender in a way that I know last time I let it go like this, the next time I got hurt. You might not be sure. And so the next thing you can do is come into that session that you're training and start warming up. If after your third set of bench with the bar, you're experiencing the same tenderness or more tenderness, you have a big fucking problem. Because typically what we see in warm-ups is you're going to feel better. Sometimes you get a little twinge, little thing, but then as you warm up, it feels better. Keep warming up. If you notice as you're warming up, it's roughly the same, I would say it's time for a light session that day. If it feels worse and worse, I would say it's time for a light session and time to consider that if this happens again next time, you got to go see a real doctor. That's kind of my decisional calculus. And then later into the warm-ups, if you have your pec was feeling kind of weird last time, This time you come in 3 days later or whatever to train heavy again, and your pec felt a little weird at the beginning of the session, but then the warm-ups felt really good. Keep warming up and go heavier and heavier and heavier. But don't go like right into a crazy work set. You know, some guys will warm up twice and then heavy triples right away. Don't do that. Don't do that. That is high risk. And the reward is good, but you could just get to that heavy triple with like 1 or 2 extra heavy warm-ups. You know, like you were going to go for a triple, but just take it for a slow single. Because I've done slow single before, and I come up and nothing pops off of the bone, but it lets you know it's there. It's like, ooh, you're like, whoop, I did not feel that at 60%, felt that at 70. We're shutting it down. Now it's a light session. I'm not injured, but I'm going to be if I keep this fucking stupid shit up. But if it felt a little weird last time, and as you warmed up, it felt totally fine and great, and then you took a heavy single and it felt amazing, try a triple. If at the last rep of that triple, it feels a little off, rack, light session after that. How many guys do you know, David, how many experience Christle and yours as a powerlifter, because she used to be a competitive powerlifter back in the day and won a bunch of meets and all this other shit. How many times do you have like 3 triples lined up, and that first triple, that last rep's like, ugh. But you're like, you look around, you've already got your gear on. I'm going to do another triple. Don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah. We can tell you, don't do that.
Actually, let's talk about warm-ups.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. But I think let's go down this road of warm-ups because pre-West Side, my old school way was if it's a bench, plate.
Sure.
Then, you know.
There are no other pieces of equipment in the gym other than that.
And then the first time I was benching with them, they're all like benching the bar for like 3 rotations. I'm like, what the fuck are we doing? And then it's a quarter. Then it's a plate. Then it's a plate and a quarter. I'm like, what the fuck are we doing? Yeah. Like I would have already be done.
Yeah, they've been hurt before.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And then now, you know, after like 5 years of doing that, if I see anybody, there's somebody a few weeks ago that came out here and just had a plate, just jumped under there with a plate on the bench, and I'm like, almost fucking washed up guys like, they're like, oh my God, you know. And then there was like another plate, and then right to the work sets after like 2 sets. Yeah. Where, as you said, you can get away with that when you're younger. But even before that, you know, should people do things? Because this has become a huge topic over the past 5 years where the warm up to get ready to bench is now taking longer than the whole bench training day, right? To me, that's fucking extreme, right? So what would be an adequate warm up, if any, before going into the strength session at all?
Man, I'm terrible at this. He yells at me all the time.
When we get to the real how to diagnose the injury and what to do, I'm just going to be shutting the fuck up because I know nothing. So basically the warm-up is you don't need to do a general warm-up. Like you don't need to get on the elliptical with a hoodie. You can if you like. You can, but you don't have to. And then the warm-up is, like, generally speaking, start very light and do higher reps, sets of 12 or something, then do a set of 8, then a set of 4, and then do a heavy single, and then do whatever it is that you were going to do for reps-wise. That's a really good way to do it for powerlifting. However, you may find the real question that you have to ask yourself when you're constructing a warm-up paradigm is after the last warm-up set that I did, do I feel good enough to go into my next heavier warm-up set? I get 135. Let's say I get the bar going for a set of 15 on bench, rack. Wait 2 minutes, stretch out, move around. I get a plate. Set of 8's the goal. Typically, it feels like pretty damn good. Today, it feels fucking weird. Creaky and tweaky and all this shit. I'm not going to 2 plates. Usually, I just go to 2 plates. I'm not going to 2. I'm going to take 135 again. Or I'm going to go to 185 and do it for a set of 5. And then it feels good. And then I go to 225. So you have to auto-regulate your warm-ups in many cases. What you do over time is you learn what's good for you. And over time, depending on the session, you warm up a little bit more, a little bit less. Because sometimes you need a little bit more of a warm-up and it helps. But there's like extremes on both sides. One is like, don't do 1 warm-up set and then go. That's fucking stupid. The other was like, if you're fucking warmed up in every conceivable way for deadlifting, by the time you do 4 total warm-up sets, but you're doing 8 total because you go by quarters every time, and you know for a fact you're just pissing away energy, you can stop doing that anytime. When you're literally sweating, your muscles are warm, everything feels, you know how your muscles and joints feel just smooth and pliable like a machine after you're warmed up? If they're feeling like that and the weight's feeling good, you're good to go to your next heavier set, and then that, and then that, and then that. And the gradation should be relatively even, and they shouldn't be major jumps, but they can be, you can, like if you squat 6 plates on a side for work sets, you can go up by a plate on a side each time. You can even skip a couple here and there and be totally fine, but it has to be where if you have a warm-up set that does not feel so great, either take it again or go up a little bit less the next time. Or if you're still like, look, 135 didn't feel so good, I'm still going to go up to 225 because I'm a max bench of 400. I'm not going to fucking hurt myself at 225. At the very least, I'll baby 225. And I normally do 4 reps, but I'm going to do 6 because I want 315 to feel pretty fucking good. What you don't want to do is do a first work set when your last warm-up felt really not so great. In the specific way, if your joints kind of feel funny, that one part of your pec you pulled last year feels it, do the warm-up again. Or pick an intermediate weight, or go to your heavy weight and do a single instead of a set of 5. Because when you are up against weights that can hurt you, you want to feel in your heart of hearts, you're ready for the shit. A lot of guys go into that first work set with one of those, like, you and I have done this about 2 times in our careers, like, here we go. You'll tell the guys, like, hey, fucking really watch me because I could just fucking go. All right, I can set the straps in to make sure you don't kill yourself. Like, doing less of that is a really good idea. Just make sure whatever warm-up you're doing, when you're coming up to the big, heavy fucking working weights, your body feels ready for the shit. I know it's crazy, but that's the only point of a warm-up. The warm-up is not so you can just tell, like, God, like, I did it. See? He's like, good. Yeah. Like, it's for your body. And if you're not ready yet, you need more warm-up. And if you do another 3 extra warm-up sets and the pec is getting worse or it's not getting any better, it's light session now. Now, here's the thing. To respond to the inevitable people that will listen to this and be like, that sounds like a fucking bitch mode way of training. No one training session ever make or breaks your career. You have years for the shit. Worst case, best case, decades. And if you went a little too YOLO in one session and evulsed your whole pack off of your shoulder, you ain't doing any more benching ever again.
Are you looking to boost recovery, enhance your sex drive, and improve performance in the gym? Do you think your hormones are out of whack and you're tired of getting the runaround from your doctor? You know, things like your hormones are just fine, stop lifting heavy weights, etc., etc., etc. I know what that feels like, as I've been down that road most of my life. This is why we've partnered with Merrick Health. Merrick Health is a premium telehealth platform that specializes in hormone optimization and preventative medicine, ensuring a better quality of life. Merrick Health offers a table talk panel tailored for our listeners, featuring comprehensive tests like total and free testosterone, sensitive estradiol, and advanced markers like lipoprotein A and IGF-1. These comprehensive panels of up to 84 carefully selected biomarkers allow you to identify areas of enhancement and maximize your physical, cognitive, and sexual performance. It's much different than the panels you may get from your doctor. Choose between self-service options where you can select lab panels based upon decades of experience, or opt for guided optimization with your own health coach. Start with a detailed breakdown of your labs and receive personalized treatment options, both over-the-counter and prescription. Visit merrickhealth.com/tabletalk and use the code TABLETALK to get 10% off your first order. Merrick Health isn't just about better health, it's about empowering you to take control of your well-being.
That's a big risk with a really small, it's like, imagine, like, I fucking made a similar analogy in the last podcast, but like, imagine you're like escaping from a research facility to a helicopter pad and there's fucking dinosaurs in the woods. Do you want to like look at the map and you're like, yeah, looks like I got it. Like, what the fuck, there's dinosaurs out there. You better look at that fucking map. You better look goddamn well at that map until you know exactly where, okay, well, the radar station's there, the fence is here, and the helicopter pad just in front, 200 meters. Got it. You need to be like that after warm-ups, because if it's real weight that can hurt you, you have to have some fucking reverence for the shit.
All right, so let's say it is a pec. We'll just stay on the pec there. Right? We're now.
That's it.
All right,
Half the people clicked off the podcast.
Yeah, it is ruptured. It's torn. It's been reattached.
Oh God.
Right, and the athlete is now free. Right, so
the hospital does one of
yeah.
these.
Well, not that. I mean, free from the 2 weeks of physical therapy.
Yeah,
Insurance will pay for.
Yes.
Right, so they're ready to go.
Yeah.
Right. What should be the first steps?
Yeah, I mean, once you ideally those PT sessions, would get
Ideally.
ideally.
Stop.
Sorry, can you tell I'm a little burnt out from healthcare at times. I would love for them to be in a place where the range of motion is nice and free. And then I know a lot of times, and this is what kind of got me on this whole injury pathway, is sort of, the advice of like, just listen to your body. Like, you're done with your PT, just listen to your body and let pain guide you. And
telling an equipped powerlifter that, he's like, okay,
right.
800 on the bar.
PR, social media, and especially with social media, it's exceptionally, worse, where everybody wants to chase that post-injury, post-surgery PR and posting, get all the clicks and get all the likes.
It's kind of stupid, though, because they have a whole story built on actually doing their physical therapy rehab.
Right.
Anyhow.
But, I guess I've just felt like there was always just this disconnect between, the things that you see with a lot of traditional clinics. And then how do you go from, that to, I used to be, 500-pound bencher. How do we even get there? So ideally, the PT would handle the range of motion and then really taking the time to
well, let's define that real quick, right?
Yeah.
Because when I tore my pec,
Yeah.
getting range of motion back to me was just being able to bench.
Right.
Right. Now, when you're in an arch position, it's not a full range of motion, but to me that was full range of motion.
Right.
Right. And a lot of meatheads are going to think that same way. Like full range of motion is that.
Yeah.
That would be false.
True. So I guess in the range of motion for this specific thing is actually what it is that the exercise that we are, you want to get back to is the bench. So for me.
Is it though? Because I never had full range of motion back to reach overhead.
Right.
Or to do a fly.
Right.
Or anything beyond what that shortened range bench was.
Right. So in this instance, I am defining the full range of motion as the actual bench or the actual exercise that we're thinking about, because we're done, like whatever activities of daily living, like that's all fine and dandy. But I want you to be able to bench. I want you to be able to do, a fly. That's my kind of thinking when I'm looking at these athletes. So when we're taking a look and being able to do that specific exercise, full range of motion, without any load, with very little to no load on, applied to it, getting you there is the first step. So, because
that's not always a thing.
No.
Like sometimes people are trying to go heavy on board presses
before
they can even touch the bar. And it's like you need to establish your relatively normal pec range of motion that you test with the bench press. Is there bonus rounds for going deep into flies and presses? Yeah, probably. But you can chase that dragon for a real long time. Like it might take a real long time for you to get all of your range of motion back. But if you want to start benching again, at the very least, before going any heavier in anything, get back to a normal range of motion in your bench. Because guys would be like, I get to here and then it kind of flops out. Solution: more weight, boards. Don't do that. That will fuck you up.
All right. So you said more weight in anything, right? So squatting.
No. Related where that muscle is used.
Yeah.
You can squat your balls off.
Yeah, because there's been plenty of times, because the other part to that is when people are injured, they have other body parts that are working just fine. So, if we were taking the bench example, like you got a whole lower body and I want you to use it, and you better damn well be able to leg press or, I don't know if you need like some other, like a safety squat bar, just, so you can protect yourself. But like you better be putting, adequate load and training the hell out of it while this, pec situation thing is going on and getting healed.
All right. Now with this injury, because it's tendon, right, reattached, we're dealing with a different time frame than if it was just muscle.
Yeah, correct.
So what time frame should that person be realistically thinking that it's going to take for that tendon to be strong enough to handle the maximal loads?
Oof, for surgery on a tendon. So I tend to really, I tend to be very depressing, and I like to give people worst case scenarios just so that way they can be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
Tendon reattachment, back to, normal training, you're looking like months to even up to a year. There's not a whole lot, the blood supply to tendon is not that great. And so it is going to take quite some time for you to work that tendon and make sure that tensile strength gets slowly increased over time so it can heal adequately. But, it's going to take some time.
I would say the longer time period would be what you'd want to tell people.
Oh, yes.
Because I'm going to be saying, you tell me 6 months, like, no, bitch, I'm going to do it 3.
Yeah, so at least if I say 12.
1. If you say 12, I'm going to say 6.
Exactly.
I'm going to change it in that way.
I would put it even more pessimistically than that, Tate, or just differently. And this is going to float right into what Christle's going to architect as kind of the comeback plan. I would say, forget about heavy benching. No, seriously, just don't you even worry about that. There will be a time sooner than you think that you're going to get back to it. But you're thinking about it all wrong. What you want to do next is put in the quality work to the process of coming back. Your question isn't when am I going to go heavier again? It's what am I doing next week and how do my muscles and my tendons feel? When you hit all the right check boxes and do all the phases of quote unquote rehab or return to performance that we're going to be talking about, when you hit each phase and you're successful, we have sort of metrics of how it's supposed to look and feel that you get to move on to the next phase. So your first concern is I want to return to a normal range of motion with fundamentally no pain or minimal pain. Then the next phase, Christle's going to talk about what it is, but basically it's establishing your ability to do repetitions with a decent load that's relatively close to failure, but high rep sets to rebuild the musculature and get tons and tons of small amount of tensile strength through the tendon to get it to start re-architecting itself. Once you're competent at that, and we'll have some definitions of what that means, then you get to ask the question of, okay, now what's my next phase? So that's what I mean. I forget. It's like, it was a stupid analogy. Like fucking high school kid is like a dweeb or whatever. He's like, I'm in love with Stacy, the popular girl in my school. What do I do to get her? You look him up and down. You're like, motherfucker, forget about Stacy. Forget about Stacy. We're gonna have you do physical fitness. I got a gay guy who's gonna come in and look at your fashion because what the fuck? And then we're gonna have a speech coach and you're gonna do all this shit. Now, when you are ready, you'll know you're ready. But if Stacy does not exist, stop. No more Stacy. When you're ready, she'll be there for you. But that you're asking the wrong question. Like you need to focus on that next phase, because here's why that's a problem, and you've seen this a ton in your practice. You'll tell them a timeline and they do two things. One is they focus like crazy on it's just biding time, and they might not even do a lot of rehab. They might lay off training their chest altogether and just assume it's recovering and then get back to the shit in whatever 6 or 12 months you say. Or they'll do a combination of that and what you said, which is like whatever that timeline is, I'm cutting it in half and then I'm biding my time. There's work to be done right now, and you earn the transition to the next phase if you complete the first phase. And there are like charitably at least 3 phases and probably more like 4 or 5. That's what I want. That's what Christle and I want people to start looking at, is now that you're hurt, you have a different mission. Your mission is not to go bench heavy again. It's to do the rebuilding work so that you are in a body that can now ask the question of, now when do I bench heavy again? Oh, now that you're big and strong and you're doing sets of 5 and your tendons feel great, well, shit, you're like 6 weeks away from maxing out. Right. But you won't ask that question until you're ready for the shit. Does that make sense?
No, that makes total sense, because I'm the poster child of the opposite.
Same.
I have 2 prosthetics. I got a shoulder that needs replacing. I've torn everything off.
For sure.
In most cases, not acute, but because of rushing, I had shoulder surgery. I got to meet in 6 weeks. I'm fucking doing it. Right. And I can sit there and talk kind of with pride, but I'm fucked up. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I could have had 5 more years at the back end of my career, which I would have been able to express better strength than what I did in the time period I did have to express the strength, but can look back and say with definitive fact that had I not done this stupid shit that I know most people listening will do, then I would have had bigger numbers at the end of the day.
Yes. Yeah. So just a quick preview, and Christle will dive into all these phases and get the real specific on all the mechanisms and bullshit. The real question you should be asking isn't when I can bench for a max again. It's when can I do like sets of heavy fives again and feel fine. But that's not even the real question you should be asking, because the real question to get you to sets of five, you have to answer in the affirmative the question of when do I get to train at least like a bodybuilder again, sets of 8 to 12 with high volume and not feel like my pec is coming off. But you're not ready for that shit either, because before that you have to do sets of 20 to 30 reps with very close to failure to rebuild all that architecture and get your muscles buffed up back again. And that's not the question to ask even up front, because the real question is how do I get my range of motion back so that I can do sets of 20 to 30 normally? That's 4 steps removed from benching heavy.
Right.
So people it's like jumping. It's like someone like you teach someone a triple jump and they're like, what Olympics do you think I'm going to be peaked for? Are you out of your fucking mind? What are you talking about? Like, you have to jump through these hoops, not arbitrarily. You earn that next ability by completing that first task.
All right, so phase one.
Yeah, phase one, range of motion. I feel like we've sort of, in that specific exercise. And then the next one is putting in.
Should this be pain-free range of motion?
So that, I have ideally, yes, it would be pain-free. I know that there is some literature that talks about having a pain analog scale, like having, a rating scale. There is some tolerance for up to, a 5 out of 10 in severity.
Holy shit.
Where, hamstring injuries, Achilles tendinopathy, and they found that even that is tolerable. Like, people can actually progress and heal. But the nuance to that is, one, the pain should subside over the next day. And 2, if you look at it from a week-to-week basis, the pain and stiffness does not increase over the weeks. So those are the 2 nuances to keep in mind. Because everyone's like, oh, yeah, I can just train 5 out of 10 and like BS my way through. So no.
Just to illustrate a counterexample of that, imagine you're 4 weeks into range of motion phase and people are like, how's it going? You're like, I'm in even worse pain now than after the surgery. Time to do reps phase, right? You're like, no, Jesus Christ, no, you're less ready now than you were. That if you are in a little bit of discomfort and pain in week 1, but by week 4, you're good range of motion and it's way less pain. And someone's like, real talk, could you do a set close to failure of like 25 reps and not pull your shit off? You're like, yeah, for sure. Then you're probably good to go to the next phase. So it has to be a stable, low amount of pain that heals very rapid. Like, here's another one to Christle's first point. If 3 days later, your site is in worse shape after a workout for range of motion than it was the day after, too much. Take it down a notch and then ease back in afterwards.
Yeah.
So with that pain, if it hurts on the first, second rep, but it doesn't hurt on the 18th, 19th
Very
rep.
good news.
Good.
Right.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's keep going with that. And I've had that happen all the time, even without an injury. Squatting the bar, doing something, and if it's getting better, progressive, over those times, then keep on.
Well, some people may not want to progress because it hurt on the first 1 or 2.
Totally.
Right. Totally.
And it's gonna hurt on the first 1 or 2. That's a big part of the rehabilitative process. And pain's not a signal to say stop. Pain's a signal to say, hey, think about this. And if after a few reps it feels better, and after a few weeks it's feeling better every week, and then at the end, preview, the way you know you're gonna go in the next phase is asking yourself, okay, what's involved in the next phase, and is my body ready for that? If you can answer that as a yes, you're good to go. If you can't, just keep going through the range of motion phase. It also depends on injury severity. If I tweak my calf a little bit, I could have 1 session where I do range of motion, 1 session where I go into heavier weights, and then 1 session where I'm back to normal. That's a week and a half. If I fucking pull my pec off the bone, bro, the range of motion phase could be 3 months in some cases.
But it's still the same phase. It's just condensed.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. So then phase 2
would be reps. So now, and with a very light load, something where you're going to be doing sets of 25 to 30 Very easy, reps in reserve, nothing. You're not trying to go, max out on, 30 reps, for X amount of sets. So just making sure that you've got a little bit of load on the bar and you're doing sets of, 25 to 30, 1 to 2 sets a couple times a week. And then you're going to have that same, pain. Is it pain free? Or if I do have pain, is it getting better over time or, progressively over time? So.
And then how long will that phase? I mean, what's the checklist for that phase to move to the next?
So can I do that? And my pain scale is either like, I'm ready to go, I'm feeling great. There's, my pec feels good, my joints feel good. I can move on. I can move on to the next phase. Mm-hmm. If I am having a little bit of discomfort, but it's getting better over time, you would still stay at that phase. And until, it is, closer to pain-free, then, you can move on.
3 example scenarios. You finish your range of motion phase. You get into that sets of 25-ish with 3 reps in reserve on each set phase. And that's really to rebuild the muscle and start rebuilding the connective tissue a ton. Scenario 1 is you do that. And at the end of your range of motion phase with minimal load, you were like feeling pretty good after the sessions and there wasn't even more soreness. Scenario 1 is you do that first workout where you do 3 sets of 25 reps on whatever dumbbell press. And then for the next 4 days, you can barely move your one pec is totally fine. The hurt pec, that specific site, is like excruciating pain. All right. Definitely don't do any more. See if that similar workout can be done again, but maybe even go to 2 sets and maybe even reduce the weight a little bit and even further reps in reserve, because then that next session could be totally fine and then you start working back up again. Scenario 2 is it feels a little tender, kind of like normal after ROM training, but maybe a little bit worse. But then you're like, okay, it wasn't terrible. Then the next week you do something similar, a little bit more, and then it feels a little better and a little better. Great, keep going. Scenario 3, it almost certainly won't happen in that first session, but it'll happen maybe in week 3 of that process, is you do those reps and you're feeling like, bro, somebody give me fucking weight because I'm ready for the shit. I don't feel shit. I feel fucking strong. I feel like I'm back. You're not back yet, goddammit. We have more phases. But if you feel like that eventually, then you're ready for that next phase.
All right. Well, I'm going to meathead this, right? So
Yes.
when you're talking exercise, is it one exercise or can it be more? Right? Because if it's a bench press that we're talking about, that's what you got hurt on, then is it the volume, can it be the bench press and say the incline press, or is it better just to be the bench press? That would be the first caveat. The second one would be, well, what if the slight incline doesn't hurt the pec like the bench does? Do I go balls out on that because that's what I would have done? Or because it's still pec, but it's not as specific as the other, and in my meathead brain, I'm working around it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not really.
You got to be real careful working around it because we're trying to work it.
Yes.
What do you think about that, Christle?
I mean, I would still, if the incline press is pain free, I would still be very cautious about taking like a heavy single or a double or a triple. I would be very good about my be a bit of more of a stickler with my technique, be more of a bodybuilder in that regard. But hey, man, I feel like you could definitely include that and not feel like, I guess I would be way more lenient to just, be like, okay, let's work this into your program and be okay with it because it's not causing you pain. I'm just not quite sure, like, in terms of how to program that, specific within the mesocycle.
Yeah. I would say if you have a full pectoral avulsion, it's unlikely anything's going to feel all that great that involves your pec. So for this example, it's less nuanced.
Yeah.
For other examples, if you can find movements that don't hurt at all, just start with doing high reps on them for a few weeks. And if that really doesn't hurt at all, go to sets of 10. And it really doesn't hurt at all, after a few weeks, go to sets of 5. And you have a movement you can really crank, like overhead shoulder press or something. I think you're really fucking strong. And then as your pecs come up, you're good. For movements that involve the pec, specifically bench press and any other flat or low incline pressing, you're going to want to get to that kind of movement soon so that you can start to work it, because you can get really good at overhead pressing while really kind of neglecting your pecs. They're not even getting that rehab that they need. You need to be challenging them through this paradigm. So even if it's just one exercise, the bench press, through the paradigm that we're explaining, and then all the others are pretty goddamn normal, totally fine. If you're real fucked up full of avulsion, it's just this paradigm, whether you choose dumbbell press or machine press or bench press. Eventually you'll have to come back to benching anyway. That'll be its own animal. You can start up front, you can start on the back end, doesn't much matter.
Now, should it be the movement that you got hurt on? Because another case example would be, I tore my pec, I'm not going to bench until the 6 months until, you know, it's supposed to be, so I'm going to just do the dumbbell presses instead.
So I would say larger range of motion movements are probably really good. Cambered bar presses, deficit push-ups, dumbbell presses with a grip where you go below your chest level. Those are awesome. They're very low load. They're very rehabilitative. They do lots of stretching, lots of eccentric control, lots of tendon re-architecting. That's good. At some point when you're into a later phase we'll talk about, which is like you're doing basically roughly normal training, you're going to want to get back to benching and start from like the bar, and then do all your good work and do the bar at the end for a set of 10. And then the next session, do 95 pounds for a set of 10 or a few sets of 10. Then the next session, 135 after all of your work. It's going to take you weeks to get back up to like sets of 10. And if that feels good, then you can start benching first in your workout, but again, for sets of 10. So you have to weave it in at some point. What we do not want to do is get really just unreal at dumbbell pressing. And even for sets of 5, dumbbells or camber bar feel amazing. And then you're like, I'm there, baby. Guess what? Next week, 1RM testing in the bench. Yeah. Do not do that. You have to come at least halfway through that whole paradigm with that lift, even if you used another lift to do most of it.
The way I always kind of thought about it was the best rehab exercise for something that tore is the exercise I tore it on.
Yes,
because that guarantees I'm remodeling what I fucked up.
Yes, and if you feel good when you feel good on that, you're fucking good to go. Because guys would be like, my incline's back up. And like, what about your bench? Like, we're gonna see soon. Like, at least start easy when you start reintegrating that original lift.
All right. So once we get through the phase 2, then what's phase 3?
So then that. The next part, sorry.
No, we have range of motion. We have getting back into reps submaximally. And then we
actually increasing the intensity.
Yes. So now you're going to go closer to failure. And these are all relative, but you're going to go close to failure for like sets of 20. I know it still sucks. Real lame ass bodybuilder training. But for the first time ever, you're training hard. And close to failure, multiple sets, multiple exercises, sets of roughly 20-ish reps. There's many different ways to slice it. That is the next phase where you're doing lots of hypertrophy work and you're feeling pretty goddamn good. And then the important thing here is to build volume, to start doing more and more sets over time in that rep range.
So if you're going to failure on 18 or 19, how is that different than going to failure on 10 or 11 if failure's failure?
The absolute load is like 70%. And when you get to failure and your muscles recruit every part of themselves and start destabilizing, if it's 300 pounds, you're probably okay. If it's 400, something's going to pop. Failure feels like shit with high reps and low reps, but with low reps, failure is destabilizing and all of your muscles start getting recruited, all of the components. If that's a heavy weight on the bar, you might go. It's the heavy weight that's the problem. The biggest overarching thing here is do not go heavy right away. Do not go heavy remotely.
You see where I keep going back to
right. But here's the good news for this plan. High reps can, first of all, harden you the fuck up mentally. But second of all, they rebuild the vascularization, they rebuild the tendon, and the best part, they fucking grow you. You can finish this rehab process with the biggest pecs you have ever had. And then you'll bench more afterwards than you've ever benched.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you have to understand that sets of 20 in the scientific literature grow muscle just as well as sets of 5. But sorry, you can't go heavy because it'll fuck up, because it's the heavy. It's the high tension that does it.
Yeah. Something else I'd slip in here is during that phase, me personally, when I actually started doing things correctly, I saw it as an opportunity to fix everything else that was fucked up too.
Yes.
So I didn't just limit it to whatever that movement was, because nothing's competing anytime soon. Like, when now is an opportunity to do this with every joint, throughout that time period.
Oh my God, yes.
Lots of great lifters over time have used their injuries as an opportunity to like recomp.
Yes.
And all of a sudden they like, back in the day, they'd work with John Meadows and they'd fucking get shredded and jacked, and then they come back to powerlifting. But like, if you can't go heavy, you might as well get jacked. And also, you need to get jacked because your muscles are smaller because you tore them, motherfucker. And now it's time to get you jacked again. You can get jacked at low injury risk and it rebuilds the tendons. You can't get strong at low injury risk and rebuild the tendons because it's too fucking risky, because you're too frail at that point.
Well, to regress a little bit, the reason they may be in the situation that they're in is because they didn't have phases like that.
Sure.
Yes.
In
Heavy
the
all the
past
time.
2 or 3 years, because it's just repeated heavy bouts over time. So I always like to say, like, if you don't physically lay this shit out, you will physically lay this stuff out.
Yes. If you don't deload, your body will deload for you.
Yes,
By
exactly.
injury.
Yes. All right, so now we're going to failure with the 20s, and now we move into the next phase.
So now we you mentioned volume. Now we can start adding more sets to the game. Going to failure with sets of 20. It's going to suck, but also, it's going to also not only just rebuild that collagen tissue, but the collagen, when it, grows back, your body just doesn't discern like, I'm going to grow it in this nice little pattern. It just lays down tissue. Like, this is broken. I need to lay some stuff down, and it's all disorganized. So it's actually the reorganization of that tendon tissue that takes so fucking long. That's why this, whole process is super annoying and, drawn out, is because you really need to have, it needs to be in a nice organized format, and it's going to take time. That's the part that takes time when it comes to rehab.
Well, that's why the repetitions are there as well.
Right.
If the repetitions aren't there, that
It's
won't
just
lay down the same.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
So so just adding more sets. So instead of 2 to 3 sets, 2 to 3 times a week, you can start adding, up to 4 sets a session per exercise, for example, the bench, and really going from there. So that's the next, phase, is just, increasing that volume with adding in more sets.
Followed by, that
leads into now that we're finally, you're still feeling great. So now we can slowly start to bring down the number of reps that you need to do, and slowly starting to increase the weight on the bar. Finally, we're finally here. We're finally here.
So basically, after whatever amount of time that you, quick recap, your range of motion work is done, you feel decent. Then you've done however much work of just a few sets of 25 reps that your muscles are a little bigger and it feels comfortable. Then you're using similar weight, a little bit heavier now for sets of 20, but close to failure. And then you're building volume through that phase. So we start with 1 set or 2, then you go to 2 or 3, 3 or 4, 4 or 5, do a few cycles of that, maybe just 1. And then you're going close to failure all the time, multiple exercises, multiple sets. And now your size is maybe the biggest it's ever been, or very close. The way you get to that next phase of going from sets of 20 at the beginning of that next phase to sets of 5 to 10 is you have to check mark the fact that before you start that phase, someone's like, what do you think sets of 15 will feel like? And you're like, damn good, I'm ready for the shit. For real, I feel great. Little weirdness every now and again, but honestly, it's fucking golden. Now you're ready. If it's still weird, still more sets of 20 ahead for you until it feels really, really good. Then that next phase is you basically every week or few weeks, you increase the weight a little bit, and then your rep ranges start to fall off, deload as needed during that time. Every now and again, you get fatigued. And then at the end of this next phase, you're doing sets of 5 to 10. And the weights are now typical 5 to 10 weights. The caveat I would sprinkle into this, if you really want to do a good job here, use a slightly slower eccentric on every rep than normal, and pause every single repetition for 1 second longer than you normally would.
Summer's here and so is the heat. I've spent most of my life training in unconditioned gyms, and I know most of you that are training in garage gyms, private gyms, black iron gyms, know what I'm talking about when I say the heat sucks. It kills your motivation to go to the gym. It kills your performance, but it doesn't have to if you keep your electrolytes up. That's why today's episode is sponsored by Element. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink with everything you need and nothing you don't. This means lots of salt with none of the junk. No sugar, no colors, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. It contains an electrolyte ratio of 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. Element can help prevent and eliminate headaches, muscle cramps, fatigue, brain fog, sleeplessness, and other common symptoms associated with electrolyte deficiency. Right now, Element is offering Table Talk listeners a free sample pack with any drink mix purchase. That's 8 single serving packets for free. And if you're an Element Insider, you have first access to Element Sparkling, a bold 16-ounce can of sparkling electrolyte water. Get yours at drinkelement.com. This deal is only available through the Table Talk link.
Now, where would you put the intent of the concentric? At what point should they start laying into it hard?
Not yet.
Okay, because that would be a point there. Is what is the tempo of the 20s? What is the point? Are the intent tempo, same type of thing? Are the concentric?
Not psychotic. Just get the weight back up.
Yeah,
bodybuilder style. Because there will be a time for that, and that's the thing right after this.
Yeah.
So the purpose of this next phase is you've already built up a fuckload of work capacity. Now the purpose is to slowly expose your connective tissues to higher and higher forces. You've already rebuilt a muscle. You've already done higher work capacity. Now you're building even more muscle and really giving that tendon time to ease into those loads. What you don't want to do is like finish a phase of sets of 20 and then just hit sets of 5s in the next phase. Mm-hmm. Not good. So you're going to take some time to go 20, 18, 16, 14, like that. There's lots of nuance because it is very individual specific, but you're going to want to take some time until you're doing sets of 5 to 10 in that movement with a little bit more care and attention, but fundamentally very similar weights to where you started off from before your injury. And then you're almost to the finish line.
All right. Then what is the next step?
I mean, from 5 to 10, I'm usually, from there, it really depends on what their original program looked like. I would almost say like, hey, now let's take a look and see what your original, program looked like. And let's work you back into, squatting. I don't know what your goal is, a heavy single or something like that. But at that point, I'm like, you're pretty much good to go trying to reprogram your stuff back. But I know that there's some nuance to that.
Yes, she's exactly correct. But what that means is now you go back to your normal powerlifting prep program. That means whatever, sets of 6, sets of 4, sets of 5. You do not go 1 rep max test right after that because you got to build up to that shit. So even if your program is like Louis Simmons style, like shitload of doubles, like you just got waves of 3 or 4 weeks until you hit a fucking max single. Start on one of those waves. Do not go and hit a max single right away. But now think about it. At the end of your progression for that last phase, you're competently doing sets of 5 to 10 heavy with a gentle pause. You're fucking good, but you're not ready for ultra heavy lifting as much as you wouldn't be ready for it if you just finished a normal phase like that and just did a max single. Mm-hmm. So now you just do a strength phase. Like typically that would be sets of 3 to 6, nice and easy. And then over a couple of weeks, just go up and up and up. And then eventually like your sets of 3 to 6 or sets of 2 to 3, and you're ready for a fucking max single. That's another, 4 to 6 weeks that it takes you to peak like that normally. But after that, second to last, so that was really the last phase of the process. You're ready to go and resume normal lifting, which doesn't mean instantly maxing. It means whatever you would do as if you'd start a program. Imagine, this is the best way to see it. And even this might be a good idea. Take a nice long deload or even an active rest phase right after that last phase of coming down from 20 to 5. And then start a new phase of like strength work and assume that your pec is good to go. Don't finish that phase and go do a max and just assume that like now you're good and you're back to whatever program you would start as a powerlifter if you were healthy, let's say after a meet. That's actually how I treat it. Pretend that the last day of your sets of 5 on that downward spiral from 20 to 5 is meet day. Take a week off, fuck off, and then start the rebuilding process. Not rehab rebuilding, just rebuild to the next meet, which would be like fucking weeks of working up to really heavy weights. That's it.
All right, now I'm going to hack this.
Yes.
Right? Wolverine
Which part
stack,
can I cut?
like Wolverine stack, peptides, all this other kind of shit. Like how hackable is this process when you're talking about the tendon remodeling?
Ooh, well, I mean, with, sports supplements, anabolics, that's going to help muscle. It's not going to help tendon. I know that there is some literature for things, peptides, BPC 157, that may help with the healing process. From what I have seen, there are other, supplements that may also help with that, but you still can't get around the work. You still have to expose that tissue to gradual load over a period of time.
Well, even with those being able to help, are they realistically going to pull 50 to 60% of the time off of this? Because I can see things helping, right? But in my own mind, I can never justify how this is going to help more than like 10%.
I can take a shot at this one.
I haven't actually, really sat down and taken a look and compared, somebody who's natty, somebody who's on dad TRT versus somebody who's
Yeah.
I actually have, I haven't really thought about, I don't know if I can actually give you a really coherent, answer.
I can give a non-coherent answer.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking tendons now. We're not talking muscle.
No, for
right?
sure. So what I would say is this. Do not assume that, BPC 157, et cetera, are fucking magical, that your boy finally got you Serostim that fell off the back of a truck, my man. And you can just be like Ronnie Coleman the next day. Don't do that. Assume the process is the same. Be really diligent with your supplements. Take all that bullshit. It all works. And then use how your body is responding as a guide to if you're ready to go. So, for example, you were planning on 6 weeks of doing the reps phase, that initial phase after the range of motion was established. But you're on the kitchen sink. You got BPC 157 horse with a Serostim rider on top of it. And then by 4 weeks, you feel right as rain. Good to go. I think you're pretty fucking ready to go to the next phase. But if you're taking all the shit and you're like 6 weeks, I'm good 3 weeks. And 3 weeks later, your friend's like, you ready to do the fucking sets of 20 but close to failure? And you're like, not really, but I'm on all the stuff. Let's do it anyway. That you should not be doing. And if you're going to take gear, take a lot of the shit that converts to estrogen. What's it called? D-ball, DECA, EQ, lots of test, shit like that. Do not take drying compounds. Don't be on fucking Masteron. Stay away from VAR, and do not fucking get into Tren and shit like that. Because I know guys who have directly shot Tren into their injury sites. I'm like, this like, Christle, come on, you've been in sport a long time. Powerlifter logic. This hurts. Tren heals everything except for my soul. Boom, there it goes. You went a little further to hit your soul. Not good. So like, stay away from shit that's gnarly. There will be gnarly times ahead. Once you're fully healed, hey, Tren and Halo are your two best friends again. But at least leading into the shit, assume you just have a super advantage. Let that advantage present itself. It'll be a stupid analogy that I think make a little bit of sense. Someone told you that you went in, you got super serum, right? Like from the government. And they were like, we need you to be a warrior for the United States. Mission accomplished. Like, you are as strong as Superman now. Like, you awake and you're like, you're as strong as Superman. What I wouldn't do is take a metal table and go, baka! Because they're like, oh, actually, we got one molecule wrong. And you just shatter your whole fucking hand. You're like, oh my fucking God. Don't do that. Try nice and easy. You go, huh. Hit it a little harder, you don't feel anything. Squeeze it and it bends. You're like, fuck yeah, now we're going. Now you start punching shit. The BPC, etc., it's going to give you those superpowers, but they have to reveal themselves in how you feel. So if you feel amazing, if you're recovering quickly, yeah, it can truncate the time back. That's definitely a way to do it. But don't just assume they're working somehow magically under the hood. And even though your tendons have been getting worse for a few weeks after you're doing sets of 12, don't worry, buddy, the BPC's got it. No, it don't got it. Clearly it's not enough. And there's a huge genetic variation on how people respond to this shit. Some people can cut their time in half. Some people need almost the identical amount of time. The last thing I'll say, I look at this differently. I say this is your opportunity to really rebuild. Assume the same amount of time that you normally would. Also, you don't know how much time it's going to take because it all by feeling anyway. So just go by feeling. But if you think like, ooh, I think I'm ready to go. I could use another week of reps phase, but I am on BBC and a shitload of Serostim. Stop. Just do that extra week. And guess what? Because you're on a ton of fucking gear, you're going to get so goddamn jacked that by the time you come back, you'll be benching the goddamn earth. I would rather take the same time to come back and heal and be better than take a shorter amount of time to suck just as much as I always did. Nobody gives a shit. The comeback plan is fucked up if you just come back to the same total. Who cares? Really? You spent 6 months building the same total? You want a higher total. So take all the time you need to be your very best. You can rush a lot of stuff. Christle and I, half the time we have sex, she's like looking at a timer. She's like, oh yeah, hurry up, yeah. And I'm like, and 5 seconds later, we're all good to go. That you can rush. You're married, who gives a shit, right? But coming back from a traumatic injury, there are so many things you don't want to rush. You know what I mean? Like, that's the last thing you want to rush. And I know it's the first thing you want to rush. But try to just, I don't want to be pedantic when I say this, put on your adult hat. Put on your patience hat. You have seen Star Wars and shit like that? The fucking bad guys are coming. The Padawan learners, the Jedi Knights, they get their sword and they run to it. What does Yoda do? He sits back and watches for a sec before he goes. Be fucking Yoda. Don't run into battle. Be patient and rebuild real fucking strong. Maybe you come back 8 months later instead of 6. But when you come back, you fucking smash every old total. Do you do? I thought you tore your pec. I did. Now it's a 15-pound bench PR, and my deadlift is fucking 50 pounds up. My squat's 50 pounds up. That's what you want. That's the ideal. We can talk about examples without mentioning names. Christle, tell us a story about the not ideal examples you've seen of coming back too soon. What does that really look like? Because there's bad fucking shit.
I mean, people end up having to go back into the OR for surgery. People have complications. People get infections, Bar's pretty dirty. You don't wash your hands. People have had, multiple surgery after surgery after surgery. And now what? So now that pec is now, now you have like a gnarly abscess situation going on. You're on antibiotics. You're in the hospital, the whole 9 yards. And for what, right? Like, because you really wanted to, bench 500 or, 800 or whatever, in a shorter amount of time. You wanted to get there as soon as possible. You wanted to post that, post-injury PR. And then, 2 weeks later, it's like, yep, back in the hospital, got an infection. I'm like, well, shit. So
how will age play into this?
I mean,
biological age
definitely takes a little bit longer to heal. Somebody who's 20 years old compared to somebody who's 40. The time frame, can take a lot longer, but also people who are in their 40s have jobs, they have families, they have other things going on in their lives versus, some 20-year-old TikToker.
Why'd you point at me when you said 20-year-old TikToker?
Well, the thing that's going through my mind is the older they get, the higher the chance of adverse effects just from the surgery alone. So then to have another surgery on top of all that, if they're 60,
oh yes,
they're dying in the hospital from some other shit that they didn't even go in there for.
Right, exactly. The other thing too is, when you also have to think about other things like high blood pressure, diabetes, COPD from, smoking. So those are also like, things that, adults tend to, have, and that has a huge effect on healing process, especially diabetes. Like if I could, tell people, if I usually tell young athletes, like, please continue to exercise, continue to train, do some sort of activity on a semi-regular basis because you don't want diabetes. Like if I can just tell you one piece of medical advice, don't get diabetes. Everything else turns to shit, once that diagnosis happens. And if you don't reverse it, it's just, all sorts of downhill from there.
So how to avoid the injury in the first place?
I guess that's my specialty.
Yeah.
Smart
program.
Don't do anything stupid. I mean, there's just a couple of easy principles you can use. One is think about how you would train for something really important, or how you would watch a professional sports team train for like the Olympics or something, you wouldn't YOLO. The Chinese weightlifting team doesn't YOLO. They have pre-programmed progressions that are very meticulously monitored and tracked. You're patient. You're wise. You know that strength is something that's added slowly over time. And so it's much better to do a squat workout or a bench workout where you did your sets of 3 and you fucking blasted them, and next week you do a little bit heavier and you blasted them again, versus pushing it a little too hard in the sets of 3 this week and still getting a big PR in the middle of the fucking off season. Who gives a shit? And then the next week after that, pull your pec off the fucking bone. And so whatever amount of weight you want to put on the bar, you're going to get there, but getting there slower is better. So add 5 or 10 pounds to the bar every week when you progress, instead of trying to add 15 or 20, because the number of lifters that achieved greatness because they had the bravery to add more weight to the bar each session stands currently at 0 ever. I'm sorry I have to be the person that says this. Not how it works. And you think it's how it works, and it's only ego. Period. It's only ego. And there's nothing wrong with ego until it gets you fucking hurt. And your ego is not going to save you in the fucking hospital on your 3rd fucking surgery. It's nowhere to be found. That's gone. So when you're thinking, okay, I want to bench 500, and you're in the mid 400s for sets of 3, it's going to take a while, and that's okay. You want it to take a while, because then you arrive with a better body, stronger tendons, more muscle, more competence, more training, and you're going to fucking get it done. If you try to rush the process, maybe it'll work out, or maybe you'll get fucked up. The thing is, if it works out, congratulations, you bench 500 2 months earlier than you could have. Hey, no one really gives a shit. If it doesn't work out, you could never bench again, because we did this whole pec surgery example. This is a very optimistic example. Usually a full pec avulsion means you're never going for maxes ever again. Mm-hmm. You're sure shit not on a bodybuilding stage posing because your pec looks all fucked up. Even if they reattach it, it looks fucked up. So the downside risk of traumatic injury is so high. And what is the risk articulated from going too slowly? You just get to the same place more confidently 3 weeks later? Is that really a downside? It is in a certain sense, so you might as well get it done sooner, but the risk to reward ratio, it's kind of like people who drive like 100 miles an hour on the freeway. Okay, you got to the party 3 minutes earlier. Okay, so what happens if you get there 3 minutes late? You're supposed to get there late anyway. It's a fucking late entry is a baller thing to do. Fucking open up your car, doves fly out and shit. So if you go the speed limit or just above, you really get to places like when you were supposed to, and not a little bit earlier. Look, if they were giving out $1,000 bills at the party and you had to get there 3 minutes early and you give it out 1 a second, yeah, sure, go 100. But if there's no huge upside other than getting the thing done a little sooner, the downside is massive. Just let that stew in there.
So what's the acceptable risk of wear and tear then? Because if you're going through a heavy strength phase, shit's going to feel a little fucked up.
Yeah.
So at what point does that become, this is too fucked up?
You have to ask yourself the question of, is my body good enough to really push the limits in the next session? And you can always do a light session and feel way better a week later. So if you ask yourself the question of, okay, is my body ready for a next heavy bench session? Body. If the answer is yes, but your mind isn't ready, it's time to turn on lots of metal and fucking take 3 monsters to the face and get your boys back behind you and fucking go to war. Then you're just being a pussy if you don't do it. But if your body feels fucked up, remember, your body is how you do the things that you do. You want to take care of it. The idea that you got to grit through pain is mostly bullshit, because it's things that weak, will-less people tell themselves makes them tough. You know what makes you tough? Showing up every fucking day. Going through the motions every day. Consistency makes you tough. And when your body tells you it's ready, taking the challenge and going to it. I've missed lots of lifts in my life, or not gone heavy. Absolutely nothing to do with my body, just because I was being a fucking pussy. Mm-hmm. I don't want that deadlift bar in my hands. I could fail. It could be embarrassing. That is no reason not to train. You better nut up. That is absolutely valid. But if your fucking shoulder is falling off your body and your boys are like, we deadlifting, you're like, fuck yeah, fellas. You're just being dumb, because there's no fucking glory. And I mean, there's plenty of glory in getting injured right out of the sport, but then you're not in the sport anymore. You got to take care of your body like it's your own, which means you have to baby it when it's physically fucked up. And when you're not ready to go heavy, just take one extra light session or a few more warm-up sets. But if it's good to go, then you got to wake up to it. That's the dichotomy. And you have to know which one is which. You're going to have, it's not that hard, but also it takes a lot of wisdom to be like, what is this that I'm feeling now? In bodybuilding, it's fucked up because nothing really gets you hurt. So the reason like you walking back and forth before going and doing instead of 15 on the hack squat is because you're a pussy and you got to work through that manhood shit in your head. Christle's like actually one of the most psychotic trainees I've ever seen. Like she just loses it and there's like just total warfare in her eyes. She doesn't struggle with that clearly, but like it's tough, right, Christle? Like before a high rep set, you're like, this is not going to hurt you. You're just being a bitch.
Oh yeah, the whole process of like going to sets of 15 because I was always set of 6 to 8, especially in the squat. That's how I grew my legs, and now I got to do this whole thing. But you know what? Now I just got to nut up and just do the work, right? Yep. Like it's time to put on my big girl pants.
Yep. And the same thing for heavy work. If you're afraid of the bar, not because it's going to get you hurt, your pecs feel fine, your shoulders feel fine, you're just like, oh, I don't know. You need to real talk yourself. That's toughness. That's the kind of shit that gets you through. But if you're a little bit banged up, shit's not feeling ideal, but you're still good to go and you don't think it's going to hurt you, now it's good to go. That's totally fine. But if you're doing this with your pec and you're like, heart of hearts, I don't know if this is a good idea. I would just take the no on that one. And here's the thing. You have a couple options. One, light work, technique work. You'll be fucking better in 3 days. Come back, smash that PR. Or just do a session of hypertrophy work. Sets of 5 to 8. You're not going to get hurt. You're going to get fucking more jacked. The next session's a light session. The session after that, you go heavy again. You don't have to just not go to the gym. There's light work and technique work to do. There's hypertrophy work to do. Or there's your basic strength work to do. You can choose whichever one you feel ready for based on how you feel ready for it. That's the core of auto-regulation.
All right. Well, the pec was an easy example. So I'm going to throw the more difficult one. Oh. So what if it's lower back? Because that's probably going to be something that's more common that you're going to see and people are going to complain about.
Yeah. It also depends on what, was it a specific exercise? Because I do see a lot of low back stuff, but also I see that a lot in people who don't even lift. So, we could do the same process over again. Like what exercises are we looking at? What is actually causing it or what makes that back pain worse? Some people actually just need to walk, unfortunately. And kind of go from there. And the process is the same as the pec. The timeline might be a little bit different, and because there are so many different causes of back pain, it's really hard to pinpoint what an exact timeline is, but the approach is still the same.
For a specific low back exercise stuff, I can speak to this a little bit. So what Christle said is right on. It's the same shit. But let's say you hurt your lower back, and let's say you did a deadlifting, right? That's a convenient example. What I would say is for when you do your range of motion work and when you do all that volume work leading in, you can definitely do some deadlifting. That's totally fine. But what was even better for you to do, I would think, is work that involves dynamic motion of the lower back. So do you guys know, the Jefferson curl, you know what that is? Like hammer that shit for sets of 20. Nobody wants to do that shit. It's so fucking annoying. But Dave, it'll fucking beef up your back musculature like crazy. It'll get your work capacity of your back built back up. And all of a sudden, it doesn't hurt to get out of bed anymore. Mission accomplished. There's some back injuries. The bar for Jefferson curls is like, you work on that bar until it feels fine. And then you start adding weight to it. You can do flexion rows, cable, dumbbell, barbell, where it's Jefferson curl, but you're rowing it as well as curling it. So you really round your back, really arch your back, row, build that up over weeks and weeks and weeks until you're gnarly at that shit. Then I would personally switch to lots of stiff-legged deadlift / Romanian deadlift, same thing, and good mornings. So now it's a static back exercise, but it's very much lower back focused. And I would say it's probably not a good idea to go right into heavy deadlifting if you think like, dude, that's going to fucking injure me, until you've built up your good mornings and your stiff-legged deadlift considerably. And then as your good mornings and stiff-legged deadlifting are progressing great, your back doesn't hurt, you're actually PRing on good mornings and shit, then it's time to start weaving in higher rep deadlifts, which sets a 5 to 8 for deadlifts in most cases, nice and easy, especially deficit deadlifts to get that flexion at the bottom, really challenge yourself. And then after a lot of deficit pulling, sets of 5 to 8, sets of 3 to 5, then it's time to start a normal strength meso over regular deadlifts from the ground and start doing, sets of 3 to 6.
In what cases, if any, would using partial ranges of motion be incorporated for rehab? Because everything that we've talked about is the full range of motion, but there will be some that will say, just avoid the whole full range of motion thing and go with the partial range of motions for the rehab or to avoid getting hurt.
There's a phase for that. It's called the first phase, which is the range of motion phase. So that means you can start with partials and then slowly work your way to full ROM. You're not increasing the weight on the bar. You're just increasing the range of motion every session or every 3 or every other or whatever it is. Start with rack pulls, eventually go to lower rack, eventually go to deadlifts from the ground, eventually go to deficit deadlifts, eventually go to Jefferson curls, and then your range of motion is really good. Now, if you want to start on deadlifts again and go right from the ground, hey, range of motion is not a problem. Then you do you can do sets of 20 on the deadlift if you'd like, but better Jefferson curls and flexion rows in that regard. Yeah. But that's how it progresses. So, Dave, you touch on a very important point. I'd love to hear Christle's articulation of the physiology here and the anatomy. Because you can lift heavier in a partial range, because you can no longer do it in a full range, you cranking that, I think, is just an expression of ego. And it's literally not addressing the fucking thing that's wrong with you. Because working around something is cool if you can check other boxes around it, but you also have to work it. So if really bending over a ton hurts your back, but you can rack pull 1,000,000 pounds, you can just keep rack pulling 1,000,000 pounds, fine. But you have to bring it in.
Yeah, eventually address what is actually, causing that pain and working your way up from there. And, unless you don't want to lift anymore, that's cool too.
Oh yeah. No, I get that.
What you don't want to do, and I've known lifters who've done this before, is they'll get hurt or just in normal training, work from like a 6 board down to a 1 board and then down to their chest every few weeks, because you're not getting that tension at the stretch, and that is robbing your tendons of reconstruction and the ability to be strong in that position. And that's where they tear. Nobody fucking tears a pec up here.
It should be the opposite.
It should be the opposite. And so once you're really good through that deep range, then you can start board pressing to get your strength back. And if board presses or rack presses feel really good from day one, which is a full pec tear, they're not going to feel good at all. But if something feels good as a partial, you can integrate that, but you cannot ignore that deep work, because guys will ignore it. It feels better because I haven't fucked with it in a while. I've gotten really strong at partials. Time to go 1 rep max on that full thing. If I had to design a protocol for my mortal enemy that I would fucking Machiavellianly tell them to do, and it'll be great to hurt them, that's what I would tell them to do. And guys will do that in their own plan. And it's always because of ego, because you don't want to fucking give up the big weights. I get it.
And it can be done with the caveat that you put in there.
Yes.
You can have that, but you got to be working that full range.
Yes. Right. Comfortable, uncomfortable pre-injured range.
Yes. It's just the icing on top. But I've seen people do exactly what you're saying, that they will go with whatever board or whatever doesn't hurt. And then inevitably they go all the way down and then bang.
Boom.
Yes. There it goes. It's well, what did you expect?
Exactly.
You did not rehab that area.
Yeah. You got 405 on the 2 board, but you've not yet put a bar to your chest. Then you decide you're going to go to your chest.
Yeah.
If you're anything like me, you're going to live in t-shirts and hoodies, maybe jeans here and there. So with Elite FTS apparel, we have a wide variety, so you don't have to wear the same shirt every single day. Strength isn't just in the gym, it's how you live. What better way to live than wearing Elite FTS apparel? We have apparel in hoodies, t-shirts, tank tops, limited edition drops to where we never bring them back again. So if you get it, you're gonna be one of the few that's wearing it. Sweatpants and any other apparel that you can think of, we have on the site. Hats, they're durable, so it will last a long period of time and won't fall apart in a week, and is easy to care for. Just throw it in the wash, throw it in the dryer, and you're done. head over to elitefts.com, top toolbar, apparel, hamburger blowout. If you're mobile, apparel. Pick up your apparel today. Why get one if you can get 2, 3, or 4? Check it out, elitefts.com.
Yeah.
And what do you think is going to happen? You know, you would think it's kind of common sense.
A lot of folks, this is how I've felt a lot. So I assume a lot of people, and I've talked to tons of people, lots of people feel like this. Not everyone, lots of people feel like this. What you really want is to be training hard and going heavy and fucking having a good time in the gym. It's a culture. It's a soul process. And as soon as you get hurt, the problem isn't that you're hurt. The problem is you can't fucking YOLO anymore. You can't feel your swag with heavy weights. So guys won't, number one, ask the question of, how do I come back to my best again? And rehab, they'll ask the question of, how do I rig the system so that I can go heavy again and feel good about myself? And if they just run right to that. Like for me, the number one question I ask after I get hurt is, okay, what other qualities or muscles can I work on so that I can still have something to work for? Because if I just had to do rehab and let everything else go down the drain, I'd be fucking suicidal real goddamn quick. That is real and it's painful, but you have to be an adult and calm in that situation and be like, okay, I can do these other things. They don't hurt. But I gotta work the fucking system. Because Christle, for real sport athletes, I'm sure you see this a lot where they get hurt, they kind of fuck off, they ride the erg cycle a little bit, rehab in sports, and then like when the knee isn't bothering them, they like go back into full contact play again.
And then they end up getting hurt again or having some nagging injury that like never really fully healed. You know, the other thing too is, you know, you touched on like a really great point about like, you know, being an adult, but I think having a positive mindset going into the whole rehab process, also super beneficial. The psychology of, you know, okay, this sucks, but like, I'm going to get through it. I'm going to get better. I'm going to take this time to improve myself.
Win at rehab.
Right. Has actually, you know, is going to be a net benefit and has shown to be a net benefit in the rehab process. If you're coming in miserable, I hate this, F this noise, like, I don't want to be here, like, I don't want to do this, you know, chances are your chances of success and moving on and being able to rehab from that injury is actually a bit lower. So sucks, but you know, we not only just have to have our bodies in check and, you know, putting on our adult pants, but also having our brains, you know, coming in with the right attitude is also super important.
Well, everybody likes the comeback story.
Right.
This is what I don't get with the whole Instagram thing. Like we like the Rocky montage training stuff better than what the ring scene was.
Yes.
Like how many times did we rewatch that? We don't go rewatch the actual match. No. Right? But they don't want to post the training montage, you know, the comeback. Yeah. But that's the real story.
Right.
Yep.
And anybody that understands anything about social media is about telling a story.
Yes.
You know, which is there.
Or they want to post the comeback story, but they want the Goldilocks version of it happens in 3 weeks versus 3 months, and every single time I'm getting better. Well, real rehab is like for a few weeks, you could be kind of floating in space and still working that injury and it still feels like shit. That's real. And a lot of people, they don't want to put out real. You know what I mean? Like, it's how many bodybuilders post the pictures of themselves in show shape? Everyone. How many of them post like all of their work sets? Like there's one of my favorite bodybuilders, a gentleman named Justin Shire, and he's a phenomenal physique and he's just a great guy. But like I love his social media posts because just like one of his working sets from every single exercise that he does, it's just like no music. It's just him doing this. And I think if you don't like that, you're never going to be good at the sport. And if that's boring to you, get the fuck out. But like I love following him for that reason, and he's got a really hardcore following because he does the fucking thing. And that's real. Jordan Peters, another phenomenal bodybuilder, just one of the biggest humans of all time. He actually posts every single work set. And people are like, hey man, can I just get a fucking summary? Like, shut the fuck up. He's doing all these things. Why? You want to be that big? It's not like, because there's other bodybuilders that will post hardly any training, but they post pictures of their abs with a cheeseburger in front after the show. Like, no, that's dope in its own way. But it's the fucking grind that if you don't want it, that shit ain't for you. So another way to see this is when you get hurt, now it's time to find out if you're the fucking man or not, or if you're the woman or not. Now it's time to find out if you get hurt. I remember, who was it? Kobe. Kobe got hurt And he was like, I fucking bitched and moaned a little bit. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to own the fuck out of this rehab process. I'm going to do it real well. I'm going to approach it like I approach sports. He did. And then he like came back and won fucking whatever, 8 more championships and bullshit. That Kobe, that Mamba mentality means you present it with a fucking difficulty. You don't go wish, oh, I wish I wasn't hurt. Sweet, dope, keep wishing. See if anyone answers. Didn't work so well. You're still hurt. You're going to look back and you're going to say, I didn't do the right rehab. I got lucky and I still got better. I didn't do the rehab at all. I quit the sport. I used to, you know, the guys will tell you every time you go to gas station, I used to live too, but yeah, great. And then the other one is I got hurt. I bitched and moaned in my head, whether it took a minute or a second or 3 days or 3 weeks, I did the thing. I'm not telling you not to bitch. Bitch. After you're done bitching, be like, okay, here I am. Now what do I do strategically to get better? If you can get that mindset going and start climbing up that ramp on your own time, patiently, you're going to get to a place where when you do hit your PRs and when you are the most jacked and strong you've ever been, people are going to ask you, what is a thing that in your career really made or broke you? And you were like, I got hurt and I didn't fucking quit on myself. I did the fucking boring shit. And now I'm back.
And people can hack it, right? Because I did. Like you can hack it. Right? And I came back and I was stronger.
Sure.
But it will catch up. You know, that's what I'll put out there, because there's a lot of people that will listen to this will say, well, fuck, I did this and it didn't take that long. Sure. Yeah, so did I. Yeah. You can do that and you can hack it and you can still come back better. Yeah. But when you're all done, you're going to look back and you're going to say, I shouldn't have hacked it, because the end result would have been higher had I not. And everybody that's in the same spot that I'm in says the same fucking thing. You know, and this 25 years of competing, the same people, 25 years of competing, all say the same thing. Like if it was going to take 16 weeks for the pack, but I did it in 6, what the fuck difference does those other 6 weeks make after 2 decades?
Oh my God. Like it's just more time for you rehabbing your body and becoming stronger and better. People do this in jiu-jitsu a lot where they'll hurt something, they hurt their wrist, they hurt their elbow, hurt their finger. They just kind of wrap it up and then they just go and keep training. When you're 40 years old or whatever, let's say you're 23 and you're the prime of your jiu-jitsu career, you have 10 nagging injuries that you're going into with every match because you just wrapped everything up since you were 15. Your opponent has 1. And so when it really comes push to shove, he wins because he took his time and didn't do anything stupid. And maybe he's 25, so he got there a little later, but he beats that ass because I know lots of competitors, every part of their body is fucked up. Sometimes that's just how it be. Dr. Jen Case has done everything very well, but just gets fucked up. No worries. She gets the surgery, she heals, she comes back, but she always takes her time to come back. That's why she's still around the fucking sport, dominating, because she takes the time to come back. If you are an agglomeration of fucking wounds, at some point, if you ever try to put a meat plan together and you're like, okay, I can't squat. but I will. But I'm going to do some kind of box safety something or other, and hopefully eventually to the meat I can get to a squat. I can't bench, but I can do dumbbells and I can do incline. I can't really deadlift, my rack pulls okay. If that's real, that's real. But you don't have to get to that level of fucked up necessarily. And the ability to plan your next meet prep and go, I'm pretty good, let's do it, is such a beautiful thing. And when you lose that, when you're older and all fucked up, hopefully genetic engineering will get to rewind the clock at some point. But until we have that, you don't rewind that clock. Nagging injuries, if they're bad enough, and especially if you re-tear your pack a few times, it's never the same again. You're never getting it back. It's always a liability. 1 liability, whatever, YOLO, it's the fucking sport. 6 liabilities? You ever seen guys come into the gym like, what are you going to do? They're like, I got nothing left. That's the downside we want folks to know about.
Yeah. I mean, the trade-off is there may be certain exercises you may never be able to do again the rest of your life.
Yes.
Right. And if you're okay with that trade and you understand that at 28 years old,
right.
Question mark, then go for it.
Sure.
But I guarantee they don't understand that at 25 years old. I didn't.
Yeah. Some wise folks do. I was not always wise. Yeah.
So I wonder, in that case, is that how you learn to be wise?
By doing
stupid shit.
There are two ways to learn to be wise.
Well, you have a philosophical channel, so this is a philosophical question.
There are two ways to learn to be wise. One is by listening to the wisdom of others. One is by making your own mistakes. They're both valid. One costs a lot more, which is why wisdom is dope. If I'm going hunting with some kind of African hunter-gatherer tribe, and I'm like, should I go poke that hyena? And they all look at me and they're like, don't do that. Maybe they know some shit. Maybe they've done this before. Now, if it bites my arm off, I'll be the guy in the tribe later when the new white dude shows up and be like, should I poke that hyena? And I go, don't do that. But he might be like, yo, I'm 23. Let's fucking get it on. So sometimes you have to learn through painful experience. And listen, if it's like getting rejected by a girl or getting rejected by a school application, like other than ego, it doesn't hurt you. It doesn't stay with you. Many injuries don't stay with you. Like you recover from most of your injuries 100%. You'll never feel it again. It's the big ones that sometimes fuck you up forever. And like Christle, what do you tell an athlete that on their third knee rehab about their like, when can I play again? And you know the answer is never at a high level. Do you have anything to say that is going to bring up that? Do you have anything motivational to say to someone like that?
Yeah, those are tough conversations, and I don't have anything motivational to say. And there's usually a lot of anger and a lot of emotion, and a lot of tears after I'm done having that conversation with them. Because people have had catastrophic injuries and haven't. Sometimes they don't come back. A lot of times they don't come back, and I can't. Then it becomes a very I have nothing.
You want a doctor to tell you she's got nothing?
No.
Or do you want yourself to tell you not to do dumb shit? Those are the two choices.
Well, I think in that example, some of the things that come into my head are there's an identity change. There's a lot of things that are going to happen because you're no longer doing the thing that you've always done, is to have a backup plan, which everybody says you should have no backup plan. They're fucking idiots. But have a backup plan, for that.
Agreed.
And if it is in the strength, fitness, bodybuilding realm or whatever it is, make sure that backup plan, because what a lot of us do or did doesn't involve health, right? It involves performance. So the backup plan should involve something that is fitness or health. Right. Right. And that can be, for a lot of lifters, bodybuilders, that can be tough. Oh yeah. Right. Because it's like, I never did this shit for health. Yeah. I don't like doing this shit for health. Well, you should mentally prepare yourself for that beforehand and kind of know what that training would look like before that. Because it's still tough. I mean, it's still hard for whoever's telling them or the person going through them. But if they have some general fitness regime in their head, then they're not going to end up being the fat, washed up drunk sitting on a couch talking about the good old days.
Exactly.
Because that I see happen more like in powerlifting realm than any others, is because it never was about that fitness. Now I got to go in there and do that bodybuilding shit. I don't want to do that shit, so they don't do anything. Yep. Right. Now they have the diabetes and all the other shit, and they're 300 pounds and all this other crap because they didn't think it through because they thought it would last forever.
Right. Traumatic injuries that kick you out of sports are traumatic in the technical sense. They're traumatic in the mental sense as well, many times. And so Christle and I have nothing so motivating. I have tons of motivating shit to tell you if you get hurt really bad and you can't play your sport. I have all kinds of fucking David Goggins shit to tell you. And some of it lands and most of it doesn't fucking land because you're still fucked up, your pec's still fucking torn, you're still in a hospital bed, and now it's 9 p.m. and all your visitors left and you're staring at the fucking stupid outdated TV and there's 2 fucking channels. And you're like, why me? So think about that next time you rush a fucking squat PR. You want to be that? What's the downside? You just go a little lighter today. 1 extra single before your triple. Is that a disaster? It's not as good as getting a fucking baller Viking fucking triple, sure. But the alternative is you ain't going to Valhalla. You going to fucking, Sinai General fucking hospital, and you're sitting there when there's no one else around. And the doctors come see you, and they usually tell you ain't doing sports anymore. And maybe they're wrong, but they're probably right. And then you got to deal with that shit. So, some of the most effective shit at like dissuading kids from doing drugs is showing them like real drug movies, like Train Spotting, shit like that. Or you just show them like legit, like you want kids not to drive drunk, you just show them actual footage of car accidents with people mangled and shit, half alive, bleeding out of their neck, convulsing. Kids don't want to see that. Some of them will pass out, some will throw up, some will complain. Their parents will be like, don't show that shit to my daughter. Shut the fuck up. Your daughter needs to see that shit, because I bet you when she's 18 she sure shit not driving drunk. So when you think, oh, what's the downside of getting hurt? It's bad, real bad. You're immobilized, you're in a fucking cast, you can't even move, you watch your muscles fucking drip off your body. You know, you're never coming back to this ever again. All the hopes and dreams you had, your whole lifestyle, all your friends, you need to re-architect all that shit. It's bad news, people. Now, can you make light of it? Of course. Will you be better on the other end? Of course you will. But it's going to be weeks or months or a year or two of like really gnarly shit. Dude, real talk, people get addicted to pills because they give you fucking Vicodins. Those make you feel real nice. When you're not on them, you don't feel the same anymore. You don't want to get traumatically injured in lifting. So remember, that's the big downside risk. That's the risk you're fucking with. It's not like, oh, but I want an extra single rep. Dope. But what if it goes wrong? It's not like, oh, no big deal. Sometimes it's a big deal. That's why you want to be smart. Take it from us old fuckers who have been hurt a whole lot.
Well, to flip this so we don't end on that sour.
I wanted to end on a sour note.
That would be a sour note.
Wow.
I will say, and I'll ask you guys as well, is I can't think of any injury, traumatic muscle tear, or whatever it's going to be, that I haven't known one person to come back from it to hit PRs, as long as they do it right.
Yeah.
You know, outside of, actually I can't think of anything, because there's quad tendon rupture. I know people who have come back from basically any injury you can come back from.
Oh yeah.
But the caveat is you got to go watch everything that we just said all over again and go through those phases, because when it's all said and done, that's how they were able to do that. So I don't believe there's any injury outside of like death that somebody can't come back from or hasn't come back from. So they
One
can't.
man 2,000 years ago did come back from death, I'll remind you.
Very true. And that was a fucked up injury.
That's right.
It can't get worse than that.
That's true.
Okay, so how can people find you?
On Instagram, Dr.Christle, and I think that's about it. I have a couple of YouTube videos with this guy over here on the RP channel, but mostly I'm on Instagram.
All right, and we already know how to find you, so we're done. Thank you, guys. It's been great.
Thank you
so much.
Sorry to get all depressing.
Wow.
towards
I was
the
like,
That was good. It needed to be sad.
Damn.
I just want to really drive it to people.